Ice Cube's Big 3 is back. The most competitive basketball league on earth is on CBS this Saturday. Big 3 All-Star Dwight Howard and the LA Riot take on Greg Monroe and the Dallas Power. Then Coach Rick Mahorn, Sensation Nazir Kaur, and the Detroit Amps look to protect home court against back-to-back MVP Michael Beasley and the defending champs Miami 305. The game played the way you love. Watch live Saturday on CBS at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, and catch replays on BET.
Oh, yay, yay!
He's been working out twice a day, every day, and he feels great. And, when he did show me his tattoo, he looks stronger already. He's been working pretty hard. Our doctors went through everything from the combine and all the tests that were ordered, and we feel very comfortable, and he's ready to hit the ground running. We plan on seeing him in Summer League.
DJ PK, there is Austin Ainge talking about Darryn Peterson. The Jazz used the second pick in the draft to bring in the Kansas Star. A big night in New York, and the guy who was there for all of it joins us now. Ben Anderson, you hear him with Jake from 2 till 6 right here on The Zone. Ben, good morning.
Hey, DJ. Hey, PK.
Hello. So you're there, you're the station's eyes and ears, and you get to go backstage and have conversations with people. When this recedes into your memory, there's probably a couple details you'll hold on to. What are your big takeaways from this night? What'd you see, what'd you hear that's going to stick with you?
Yeah, I guess it's the big surprise of what Darren's actual personality, at least for now, seems to be versus what he was billed as at Kansas, which was, this quiet Kawhi Leonard type player. I've talked to Kawhi before. He is extremely quiet. He's very serious. He doesn't seem to really loosen up hardly at all. And that's not the case with Darryn. Darren's quite loose. He's definitely a pro. I mean, you can tell he's very mature for his age, but he does not seem like somebody who's going to have a hard time fitting in. He doesn't seem like he's going to have a hard time, finding his teammates and becoming one of them. I think that kind of 180 compared to what the expectation was most surprising to me.
He said that he thinks, along with Tait George, that they can form a dynamic, if not the best backcourt in the league. Just wondering, as far as the assimilation process, Ace Bailey is already there, obviously. How do you think those three fit together with what the front court has?
I mean, at some point, you might have to replace one of the front court players with Ace Bailey if Ace Bailey is good enough to do it. For now, I suspect Ace and Darryn will play probably pretty similar roles. Obviously, Darryn will be able to play a little bit more point guard, but early in his career, I don't know how much he's going to be tasked with that. Tait George, he can play off the ball as well, so that might be his best opportunity. But if he's playing with the second unit, I still think Isaiah Collier, assuming he's on the team, is going to get the majority of those reps as a point guard. And that might make Darren's life really easy. He doesn't have to go out there and get everybody involved. He can kind of just focus on his own game, getting shots up, and that's his skill that should translate right away. In addition to what he does on the defensive end, I mean, he is a pure shooter, and I think that's something the Jazz could certainly use.
You do a podcast with Chandler Holt here at KSL Sports every Monday. You guys have your Jazz Notes podcast, and Chandler posted something on social media last night, a quote from that apparently Peterson told his agent after the NBA draft combine. Something about Utah I like. Their energy. I feel like I could be with those guys. Close quote. Do we need to remember quotes like this? This is a kind of quote that just tells us what a bunch of smoke screens the draft is and how much people are trying to manipulate it. I mean, it was the whole Ace Bailey saga a year ago. Now this quote and worried about him not working out here, yet he's telling his agent this. Should this just be a lesson to us all about the draft process?
Yeah, I think I even brought it up on your show that, when the Jazz drafted Dante Exum, they kind of, not famously, but notoriously passed on Marcus Smart, who ended up being a very good NBA player. And the rumor was Marcus didn't want to come out to Utah to work out because they already had Trey Burke on the team and he wanted to be a point guard. And then we learned 5 years later that he and Quinn Snyder talked for several hours the night before the draft. So I do think these teams always find a way to get in contact. And while agents try to position their players and teams try to position and keep everything hidden, I suspect there's more contact behind the scenes than most people recognize because, worst case scenario, you don't end up as a number one overall pick. It'd be nice to know who you're going to. It'd be nice for your family to know something about the state, the team, the organization. So I think the fact that this does get done probably should always remain in fans' eyes, that this is something that just because you don't hear about it doesn't mean, everyone's not dotting their I's and crossing their T's.
What was his group like as far as who was there with him?
It was just family. I think his agent was at the table as well, but he's pretty, I don't want to say small town, but I just don't think he needs a lot. I think he's pretty well contained. It seems like his group is pretty well contained. Even walking around, and this is not a knock on AJ DeBonsa at all. There's a lot of different ways to do this, and I've seen a lot of guys have success. But everywhere AJ went last night, his dad was there. There was a huge group of family, a huge group of people, all of his handlers from DC. It was just a lot. It's kind of a big crowd, and everybody noticed it as he was walking around because it was hard to miss. There was just so many people. It's just not really how Darryn seems to operate. I mean, he had plenty of attention last night, but he's kind of I don't want to say the word loner. I don't think he needs a lot. I don't think he wants a lot. I think he likes his privacy. It seems like he likes to be kind of low down and quiet, and I won't be surprised if that follows him to Utah.
It looked like as you went around the table, I was guessing mother, brother, sister, dad, agent, and then somebody. I don't know if you got to meet any of them or talk to any of them. No,
I mean, they weren't in the green room, they were in the green room, but they didn't follow him down to the press conference area at all. And again, AJ's dad is his agent, so it makes sense why he would be around. But no, there just was not a lot of bodies or anyone guiding him around. I do think he's comfortable being on his own. I'll be curious who ends up coming to Salt Lake with him. Some guys bring, a lot of people. Taylor Hendricks notoriously brought his mom, and his brother transferred to UVU. I think he was happy to have his infrastructure around him. And I think Tait George came out here with a cat and his girlfriend and ended up getting a dog. But not everyone needs the whole group.
It seems like in listening to Austin Ainge that obviously we knew that there was a strong possibility that he would be available, but that they feel like all the potential issues have been answered and they're not question marks. It's going to be if it doesn't work, worst case scenario, it doesn't work, it's going to be because he's not a good enough player. And we all think he's a good enough player, so it'll work. It's just a matter of what level to the degree that it does work. But the point I'm asking and the question in your conversations was their level of comfortability, in my mind, came fairly early about these questions of him not playing. And so then they solidified on drafting him. How did you see that?
Yeah, I think based on the fact that the team has relatively strong ties to Cam Boozer through Carlos, probably understand everything Carlos or Cam Boozer has done for several years because they've scouted him just as closely as I'm sure they did with both AJ DeBonsa and Darryn Peterson, that if the Jazz were comfortable passing on a player as good as Cam, probably means they were pretty assured that there was nothing long-term wrong with Darryn Peterson. Now, let's see. He's got to get on the floor. He's got to actually prove it. And if it continues to linger and plague him, then it could be one of the bigger mistakes the Jazz have ever made. And sometimes you don't know those things until they actually get on the court. But Darryn, he said one of his goals is to play all 82 games this year. He wants to get out there. He says he recognizes he wasn't able to accomplish just simply being on the floor at Kansas what he wanted to. So he thinks that's something that's fixed. The Jazz clearly think it's something that's fixed. Otherwise, I don't think they would have had any problem passing on him because there was very good options behind him still.
We get to see a lot on TV, but I don't know if we get to see everything. When he went back and did the media, did you get any more interaction with him, hear anything, or they whisk him away after a quick media session there in New York?
No, he doesn't seem too big for anybody. Now, that's why the draft is fun. These guys generally haven't had a bunch of paychecks hit. No, that's different in college. He's got some money, I'm sure. And I heard he signed an absolutely massive deal with Adidas yesterday. I overheard, and this was just on the train, but I think it was agents talking that it's the biggest deal for a rookie since LeBron James.
Yeah.
So Adidas made a very significant investment in him, but no, I don't think he's bigger than this. I don't think he's acting bigger than this. I think he's enjoying himself. I think he understands how to enjoy himself. And you can just kind of tell he ranked his favorite movies. His, picture on Twitter is Edward Scissorhands, which is a weird 90s throwback. He's a little bit of a different kid. I'm not sure he's your average 19-year-old.
How was the scene back there? Because the draft was so ballyhooed for so long. I'm just wondering, compared to the other ones that you may have covered, was it more exciting, more publicity and noise around it?
No, it seemed a little quieter. I was a little surprised by that. Now, maybe it's because of who was actually there. I mean, not a knock on BYU, but AJ DeBonsa didn't go to, Duke, didn't go to Michigan, didn't go to one of the bigger college basketball schools traditionally, though BYU's working towards that. So while there were some faces there, it wasn't like Coach Calipari was sitting, by his side the way he was with Darius Acuff. And then the Jazz having the number 2 overall pick and Darryn Peterson being a little bit of a mystery himself, didn't seem to have, a huge media following. And Cam Boozer's, very buttoned up. He's just very quiet. And then the fact that it went Washington, Utah, Memphis isn't exactly, Los Angeles, New York, Miami as far as drafting at the top. So I didn't think there was crazy media around. And because I've been in a few years, I wonder if kind of the attention to the draft is kind of smaller than it used to be in person. But it was pretty calm. And then the fact that it went mostly chalk for the first at least 4 picks and maybe the top 8 picks, I think that reduced a little bit of the excitement around the building as well.
Is there a Knicks hangover too? These people can't get up for the draft. They were just celebrating an NBA championship.
I kind of felt that around the city. I was expecting with the World Cup it to be pretty loud here and pretty crazy. And you can tell, there's a lot of soccer kits, running around. But there's still some barricades up by Madison Square Garden where I think the parade was. So I do wonder if everyone's a little bit, I don't want to say basketballed out, but certainly got their fill.
So you say it went according to form. Anything catch you off guard?
I think the whole weekend with Dusty May was kind of surprising, leaving Michigan and then them taking Morez Johnson with the 9th overall pick when, you hire a guy the day before the draft. Now, I know it's not the first time they had talked, but the fact that they ended up picking a Michigan guy and the 3rd Michigan guy, I think a lot of people thought Yaxel Lendeborg or Adai Mara would have gone first. So that was interesting, though I really like Morez Johnson, so I like the pick. But I thought that was interesting. The fact that the Thunder ended up still making their pick. I know they had 2 picks, and they ended up with Bennett Sturts, I believe. I kind of wondered if they would be more aggressive to try to trade up. But otherwise, again, just kind of, I think teams are a little feeling held hostage by not knowing how to use future picks. So I don't think there was a lot of trades on draft night last night, using a pick from next year or a pick from 2 years ago, because nobody knows what type of value they're going to have. So it's safer to just hold on to them for the time being.
I think that's part of it, but also all this talk that the next draft is bad and one after that is pretty mediocre. This draft was supposed to be good, so the whole thought, well, do you really want to trade these top picks? It's not like the commissioner was running back out there announcing, trades as we move through the, top dozen picks. I thought it kind of underscored the fact that we've been saying everybody says this is a good draft, but the actions really backed up the words. Young talent, rookie contracts are valuable, and these guys are all pretty good players with pretty high expectations. So we'll see how it plays out, but the team seemed to really back it up with the decisions they made here in the first half of the draft.
Yeah, I think you're right. The fact that, Koa Pete, he would have gone top 10 in the Cody Williams draft. He went 30th, in all honesty, that's a very similar type of player coming out of Arizona with, some good physical tools and a game that's still developing. So, obviously, yeah, I've heard that the next 2 drafts are flat out lousy. So I don't think anyone's really excited to be a part of them, which probably explains why the Jazz were willing to give up some of the picks they were to Memphis in the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade. But I do think this draft is, at least at the end, everybody bought into the hype. Now we'll see what it actually looks like a few years from now. Not every draft lives up to the hype, but certainly it seems like the front office has bought into it.
How many BYU folk were there in terms of, we saw Kevin Young, but thinking that, okay, this is an opportunity to really push our institution off the back and shoulders of AJ in terms of publicity? What did you see there?
I didn't see a lot. I was surprised. I thought I would see more BYU jerseys. I saw more Jazz jerseys. I don't know if I saw a single BYU jersey beyond anytime you walk around in any other city, you're going to see a hat somewhere. But I really didn't feel a big contingent there. And that doesn't mean they weren't operating behind the scenes, but they weren't there on media day on Monday either. So it does feel like AJ's kind of moving forward. And look, he said he still wants to maintain a very strong connection to BYU. And I suspect Kevin Young will, be happy to have that around and the entire basketball program. But I didn't see a lot of it. I was surprised a little bit on that front that, this is a huge day for BYU as well. AJ's going to be their highest draft pick ever. It's hard to go higher than 1-1. So we will see. We'll see what that connection ends up, how it manifests itself going forward. But I'm with you, PK. I was a little surprised that outside of Kevin Young and of course Yegor Demin plays for the Brooklyn Nets, and he was just kind of wandering around and actually turned me down for an interview.
Oh, he did?
He said he didn't want to get in trouble with the Brooklyn Nets PR people. And I said, hey, I don't want to get you in trouble either. So that's fine. But everyone was cool. He was very nice about it.
Ben, I'm curious now that they know who the draft pick is. We talked about how they're going to build the roster this summer. Now they know, right? If they're drafting a big, that's going to change things a little bit. But they drafted a guard. So priorities now, veteran guard, backup center, maybe a big who swings between the 3 and 4, but maybe not. How would you prioritize these with the roster spots they have left and the money they have left?
Yeah, I think another veteran ball handler. Tait George, Isaiah Collier, Darryn Peterson is just a very young group still. They're talented, but they're really young. So I think there's probably situations where you'd want to bring one more person in, unless that ends up being Svi Mikhailuk. I'm really curious about the front court behind Walker Kessler and Jaren Jackson Jr. Kyle Filipowski's a really skilled offensive player, but he's not a defensive player. Yusuf Nurkic is not a defensive player either if he comes back. So I think they could use a backup big that could provide a little bit of rim protection, or they're just going to have to balance having Walker and Jaren out there, for 48 minutes a night in some role. And that's possible, but we need to figure out how much they're comfortable playing Jaren at the 5. I mean, he has not done that particularly well throughout his career. And just because it seems convenient doesn't necessarily mean the Jazz have to do it.
July 4th afternoon, is the Huntsman Center going to be sold out?
I would imagine. I mean, I know it's the 250th anniversary of the state or the country, so that might be a little bit of a distraction, but you guys saw the draft party last night. I'm sure you had some fans come down and hang out at JCW's as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of excitement about this team, and the fact that I think you're going to get both Ace Bailey and Darryn Peterson on the floor together is the best summer league roster the Jazz have probably ever fielded.
Oh, go down to Vegas and win this thing. The first of many titles. I see what you're saying.
We'll see. We'll see how much Ace ends up playing. I haven't heard anything, but maybe he doesn't end up going all the way down to Vegas and still, suiting up in some of those games. Maybe he does. The second-year guys traditionally do, but Ace isn't your traditional second-year guy.
You think there are any guys on the roster? PK was talking yesterday, and he's right. I couldn't name off the top of my head everybody who played for the Jazz last year. Maybe you could. I think there were like 25 guys. I might be off on the number, but I think I remember something at the end of the season about that was like the 24th or 25th player who suited up for the team this year. Did they find any diamonds in the rough? Obviously, some of those guys, they were trying to lose games, and every loss was important because they needed every loss and to win the coin flip of Sacramento to get to number 2. So some of those guys clearly are just on their way, but was there anybody in there that we're not talking about that we're looking who's going to be part of this?
I think Blake Hinson has a real chance as a two-way contract guy that signed a 2-year, two-way contract. He's 26 years old. I mean, he shot like 47% from 3 last year, and it was a weird role. Again, a role that is not going to be there for him this season as the Jazz are trying to actually compete. He's not going to be able to shoot it every time he touches it, but if he makes it every time he shoots it, it's going to be a real, feather in his cap. And, Jazz did draft a player who conceivably could replace Bryce Sensabaugh, depending on who outplays, one another coming up here in the offseason. And they're going to need shooting and they're going to need some size. And but I thought Blake Hinson played really well and is very affordable. And we know now how expensive contracts get very quickly. I mean, you're talking about a 26-year-old who's bounced around the NBA a little bit in the G League. It's never really broken through and really seemed to break through. He's got the body. Certainly seems to have the demeanor. So that's a name I would keep an eye on as a chance to make the roster as a two-way player and then eventually maybe move that up to a minimum level contract that could potentially replace somebody else and give the Jazz some save money.
Ben, we appreciate it as always. Safe travels, and we'll hear you back on your show with Jake. Weekdays 2 to 7 right here on The Zone.
Thanks, guys.
Ben Anderson from New York, where he's covering the draft. DJ and PK, Matt Tait covers the Kansas Jayhawks. He'll talk Darryn Peterson with us after the break. He joins us from our R1S1 Sports and Wave the Wheat. Matt Tait on Darryn Peterson next. Stay with us.
3, 2, 1.
This is Scotty G and Coach Tim LeCoe.
Joining us now, it is Kurt Heelan, NBC Sports, ProBasketballTalk.com.
You mentioned Walker Kessler, and what do you make of that? What do you read between the lines, I guess?
Look, it sucks to be a restricted free agent in the modern NBA because your leverage is largely gone if the team that has your rights lets it be known they're going to re-sign you, which is rightfully what Utah's doing. Does it drive down his market? Yeah, that's kind of the point too. But the reality is they're not letting him go. They can match and at worst force a sign and trade and get back other things they want. So I think this is the agent trying to, man, we're not happy. At the end of the day, the sides will come to a number and agree to it. And if he's really frustrated, you push for a shorter deal. You try to get back on the market sooner, and maybe Danny's good with that, and you figure something out.
Catch Scotty G and Coach weekdays from 10 to 2. Presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Ice Cube's Big 3 is back. The most competitive basketball league on earth is on CBS this Saturday. Big 3 All-Star Dwight Howard and the LA Riot take on Greg Monroe and the Dallas Power. Then Coach Rick Mahorn, Sensation Nazir Kaur, and the Detroit Amps look to protect home court against back-to-back MVP Michael Beasley and the defending champs Miami 305. The game played the way you love. Watch live Saturday on CBS at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, and catch replays on BET.
Oh, yay, yay!
Play all 82 games. Coming off the year I had at Kansas, I didn't get to play all the games that I wanted to. My first goal was to play all 82, make the playoffs, try to get a ring. I've seen some rookies get deep in the playoffs, and they kind of inspired me to get there. They came up short, but I want to get all the way and get a ring.
There's Darryn Peterson. Music to your ears, PK. Play all 82. Get a ring. Old school. He knows what everybody's been saying.
I don't understand why rings are such a big deal. I don't wear jewelry. A ring.
It represents the championship.
I want to win one. I understand that passion. That's what that's the pinnacle of team play. Obviously, is to get that, and those are lofty goals. Might as well have them. I'd rather have them than not have them. He said all the right things.
He said all the right things. He's clearly heard what everybody's saying. He knows why he fell to number 2, and it puts a chip on his shoulder, which he also said on the list of right things he said. We played that quote from him earlier this morning.
Right. Boxes
have been checked. Next up, as you like to say, 4th of July, the afternoon. Fireworks at the Huntsman Center, and then go watch fireworks in the sky.
Yeah, I bought season tickets to the Summer League this year.
All 3 games, huh?
Big all session pass. I like it.
Big spender. DJ PK, we're joined now by Matt Tait, covering the Kansas Jayhawks for R1S1 Sports and Wave the Wheat. Matt, good morning.
Good morning. How we doing, fellas?
Well, everyone here is all fired up about the draft. They finally know who the Jazz are getting. There was lots of drama and twists and turns and wondering. And I bet you hear me say there was lots of twists and turns, and you think that dude has no idea.
Yeah, that's fair. I just talked with your producer. He said, "You ready to talk some Darryn Peterson?" And I said, "Always," because I talked a ton of Darryn Peterson in the last 10 months, good, bad, and otherwise. But Utah got an absolute stud. I've been doing this a long time. I've covered pretty much every one and done player who's come through Kansas under Self. I've seen some divas. I've seen some, diamonds in the rough. I've seen all kinds of different players and everything in between that. And I honestly don't know that I've enjoyed one quite as much as I enjoyed Darryn Peterson. That's not to say he's my favorite player I've ever covered. There's 4-year guys that you build relationships with and you watch them grow up, and those kinds of things definitely make a difference in your ability to get to know people. But as far as the one and dones with the most hype and all the buzz that came with that guy, the outside perception honestly couldn't be more off. Utah got a stud, they got a star, they got a great human being, and he's going to show it, and the organization and the fans are going to love it.
Clearly, with the Kansas fans and probably with the coaches and all that, there was some frustration when he wasn't playing as much as anticipated, and he took himself out, certainly in that BYU game in the second half. I'm wondering, how did you see his demeanor in terms of how he handled that? Because there was a lot of heavy criticism directed at that situation.
Yeah, there was, and you've heard the Kobe comparisons, and obviously that's high praise and a little bit crazy in a lot of ways because, Kobe's a top 2, top 3 player of all time. So I get why people kind of shake their head or tilt their head when they hear that. But I do think that, and I wrote this morning, one of Darren's biggest Kobe traits, I think, is just the thick skin, man. He let all of that roll off his back. I mean, obviously it gets to a point where it bothers you. I don't care who you are, and I don't care what we're talking about. I mean, when you get criticized literally after every game you play or don't play, at some point it's going to bother you. But we never saw it boil over. We never saw it, really get to him. We never saw him explode. We never saw him, fight back. We never saw him, want to yell at anybody or show frustration. I mean, he just kind of shrugged every time it got brought up or every time he was asked directly about it, and he said that's their opinion, I'm comfortable with who I am, or that's how they feel. I'm not going to worry about it. I don't think about the noise. I don't care about that stuff. I mean, he handled it like a very mature young man, and certainly more than you'd expect from a college freshman. So it was frustrating. It was frustrating for everyone involved, and that includes Darryn. I mean, I don't know how many times we heard Bill Self or Darryn himself say, if he could be out there, he would. And it was killing him to not play. And I think the narrative became, well, he doesn't care about basketball. It doesn't matter to him. It doesn't mean as much. This is not something he's committed to. All of that stuff's crazy. It really is. I mean, this guy lives and breathes basketball. It's all he knows. It's all he does. It's all he cares about. And so even though he didn't show it, and I credit him for not showing it, because a lot of guys would melt down in that situation or certainly let it boil over. Even though he didn't show that, which some people wanted, to see some fire, to see some frustration, they wanted to see him kick a chair, or whatever it would be. I know it ate at him. I know it killed him. I know he would have rather been out there than not. And so there's a lot that went into it. Some of it, injury related, some of it mental, some of it a combination of the two. There was a lot that went into that whole thing, that whole season. But the bottom line is, the guy wanted to play. And one of the things I judged the most, man, sort of when this all was happening was, the fans and KU Twitter and everything were melting down themselves and freaking out and criticizing him and calling him this and calling him that. And it reached the national level. I mean, you had Stephen A. calling him that. You had Kendrick Perkins calling him that. I mean, it was at a national level at one point. I think it was over All-Star Weekend in the NBA, so that helped too, because they didn't have as much to talk about elsewhere. But one of the things that I always looked at, and one of the things that always meant the most to me in terms of evaluating the situation for what it really was, is the fact that Darryn Peterson's teammates weren't bothered by it at all. They loved the guy. They cared about him. They supported him. And, yeah, they wanted him out there. But it wasn't like he was some diva and they were tired of it. And it was the Darryn Peterson show, and they were just afterthoughts. I mean, he immersed himself in the culture. He cared about his teammates, and they cared about him. And for my money, that's the kind of stuff you get drafted on. I mean, that's the kind. You can play ball. Everybody can put the the ball in the basket. But when you're looking to build a franchise, or you're looking for a franchise type of player like you can get at the number 2 position in the draft, to me, that's the kind of thing you want to look at. And Darren's got all that stuff in spades. He's a phenomenal teammate, and he will fit in great there.
You've touched on a couple things right there when you say phenomenal teammate. I'm curious, when the Jazz did their homework and they talked to his teammates at Kansas, what do you think they heard?
I think they heard, most likely, man, those guys probably talked about his talent, because day one when he got to Lawrence and first set foot on campus as a member of the team and a student at KU, those guys were marveling at what he could do. I mean, it didn't matter if they were starters, didn't matter if they were walk-ons, it didn't matter who they were. Every time we got to talk to somebody about him, they were like, I've never seen anybody do what he does. And so as much as I think, if they dove deeper and asked him about, okay, how was he in the locker room? How was he during timeouts? How was he at the dorm and things like that? I'm sure they had a glowing review for him there too. They hung out together. They spent time together, meaningful time. It wasn't like Darryn was just here on a stopover. He's got friends here that probably aren't going to play at the next level that he'll be friends with for a long time. And he talked about that in the locker room after their loss to St. John's in the NCAA tournament. I mean, he said it meant the world to him to come to Kansas, and he's got lifelong friends and guys he's gonna be in their weddings and things like that. I mean, maybe that all sounds good, but to me, Darren's not the kind of guy that's going to say stuff just to say stuff. He's going to say what he means, and he always did. And so I think that stuff would come out, but I definitely think the first thing every one of those guys would talk about is just how freaking talented he is. It wowed them, and those were some pretty good players too. But they made it very clear from minute one that what they were seeing, what they were playing with, who this guy was unlike anything they'd ever seen.
After he was drafted, we had an opportunity to interview him on the telephone, and I asked him a question about, having motivation of not going number one. I'm going to play you his response, and then I want you to respond to it.
Now I'm with the Jazz, and I'm super excited to get there. And it'll definitely keep a chip on my shoulder throughout my whole career, and I'll take it out on everybody, not just that guy in particular.
Go ahead.
I love it. I saw you guys tweet that last night. I mixed it into my story actually because it's perfect. It's him. It's funny too because I asked Bill Self the same thing after the draft or after Darren was picked. I said, is he the kind of player or person that's going to use that as motivation and fuel, being slighted and not being taken number one and classic Self. He said, well, first of all, I have a hard time saying that if you go number two in the draft, you were slighted. So I'm not gonna go there is basically what he said. But he did say, I do know the kid well enough to know that he will find and use anything out there for motivation to help him in the future. And so I love the comment. I think that's exactly right. I think that I was only around him a year and not around him a ton, but enough to truly get a feel for who he is. He's a killer, and that's not just words. That's not just a soundbite. That's not just something that he thought would sound good and make everybody laugh or smile or whatever. I think he means it. And again, that's the Kobe comp, right? That's you could beat Kobe in a game of pool in the summer when no one else was in the bar and it didn't matter and there wasn't any money on the line and he was playing left-handed, and he would still remember that the next time he played you, and he would try to take it out on you then. Darren's not quite there yet. I do want to hesitate to completely make that comp because Kobe was one of one, I think. But Darryn is inspired by that, and he's studied that, and he wants to be that same way. And so I think that I think he means it. I think he wants to be the best at everything he does. And so throughout this point in his career, that's meant, being the best in high school. That's meant being the best in his draft class. That's meant being the best in college. That obviously didn't work out because of all the circumstances and injuries and issues that he had. But, even with that said, man, he played a lot of games where he didn't really play the second half, as you mentioned in that BYU game, and the guy still averaged 20 points a game. He was not a liability. It was an issue, and it was something they had to work through, and Self had to learn how to coach kind of two different teams, really. But man, when he was in the game, he put up numbers, and so it's an efficiency thing with him, and if he is able to stay healthy and meet that goal like he talked about last night of playing all 82 games and all of that stuff, I mean, his numbers are going to be phenomenal. But it will be that, on any given night, his motivation will be, I want to show up and I want to be the best player in the gym. And that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if LeBron's there. It doesn't matter if Joker's there. It doesn't matter if whoever's there. His goal will be to, make sure he puts on enough of a show and shows people that that dude's the best player on the court. And, he won't succeed every night. We know that. But when that's your motivation and that's how you're driven and that's what you want, man, it tends to produce good things more often than not. And as long as he can stay healthy and be supported and be developed and continue the ride that he's on, so to speak, he's just going to keep getting better. That's the crazy thing. I mean, they got a heck of a player, and there's no doubt in my mind that 2, 3, 4 years from now, he'll be even better because that's what happens. He's still young, and he's just now reaching the NBA level, and he'll have to get better to do what he wants to do there.
Matt, when you heard the whole creatine explanation for why things went so bizarrely, how did that land with you, and what did you hear when you started asking around about it? Because I bet you were asking around about it.
Yeah, it made sense in a sense, I guess. It always seemed like it was something that we weren't hearing about. It always seemed like there was something else here, and obviously a lot of people jumped to the load management thing, and that his agent or his camp or his family or whoever was telling him when to come out and when not to play and all that stuff. And who knows, maybe that was true. I mean, I wouldn't say that's crazy either. I mean, I think that, and I wrote this a few times too, like, I think that if it were me or my son, I probably would have handled it very much the same way. I might have been a little more transparent with it. I think that's where they kind of misstepped. I think they could have come out and said, hey, this is what we're doing and this is why. And when you bring a kid up from age 4, 5, 6, all the way through middle school and high school, and the spotlight, he's been under the spotlight, and the microscope's been on him throughout that whole time. I mean, he was the best 8th grader. He was the best, 16-year-old. He was the best in his high school class, right? I mean, this has been a life's journey for him, and so they were doing all of that work, all of that extra stuff, everything he put into it to get to this level, to be an NBA player, to make it to the league. And so when you get to the point where you're 10 months away from reaching that goal, I don't think I would push any kind of injury either. I don't think I would ask my son to do that either. I mean, I think that's where it kind of became one of those things where it grew a life of its own, it being the story, because if they were protecting him, or if he was, mentally protecting himself even, I don't know that there's a whole lot of people that would complain about that, as long as you just went out and said it. And that was the issue. They didn't really say it. And so the creatine thing, sure. I mean, if that was part of it, then that kind of falls into that same category for me. Like, it would have been great to hear about that when it was all going on, back in January or whatever it would have been. So that was a little confusing to me. Having said that, though, it did make sense, because it was one of the strangest things I've ever seen, because again, I've been doing this a long time, and I've known Bill Self for a long time, and you want to talk about another straight shooter. Self doesn't say anything just to say it, and for 2 years, maybe longer, he spent any opportunity he could find talking this guy up as the most talented, best player they've ever recruited to Kansas. There were times during the 24-25 season, when Darryn was still a senior in high school, when we would have a post-game press conference or a midweek press conference with Self, and once it was over, however long, 15 minutes or whatever it was, at the end of it, if nobody brought up Darryn, or if he didn't bring up Darryn, he would say, guys, no questions about Darryn? I mean, this dude was so ready to coach this guy. And again, he doesn't just, blow guys up like that for no reason. He doesn't build the hype like that for no reason. In fact, he does the opposite. Self will be the first to downplay anybody or tear a guy down before he builds him back up and all of that stuff. So the fact that for 2+ years we heard about how great Darryn was, and then we had to watch him, show flashes of it, but also not be kind of as advertised, not quite be that guy that we had heard about for 2 years. I mean, it made me think from the very beginning that something has to be going on, because it had to be about more than just the mental side of it, or whatever load management anybody wants to say, or whatever that was. I mean, there had to be something that was affecting him physically and affecting his explosiveness, because I saw, enough in high school, and obviously Self saw a ton, to know that the guy we were seeing was way more cautious out there than the guy who just let it go and was trying to dunk on everybody's head and was trying to, kill the game and embarrass people in the process. We saw that on a very few occasions during his time at Kansas, but it was very limited and few and far between, and so that made me think that this has to be more than just a mental thing. I think the mental part of it was huge, but there had to be something. So it made sense to me. I know there's still people out there that that don't buy it, and that's fine too. I think it's all water under the bridge now. None of it matters, right? He's reached this point, and now he kind of gets a clean slate, and I think he recognizes that. I think he realizes that, and I think knowing him the little that I do, I think he's over the moon about the opportunity to start fresh and show people who he is. And he talked about that, right? When he's talking about playing Summer League, he said, I want to show everybody that I'm back. So not only did Utah get an incredibly talented player, but they got an incredibly motivated guy too. And when you put those two things together, it's hard not to see great things in his future, and probably pretty immediately. I mean, Self said last night, when you talk about what does it look like in 10 years, he said, I think we're talking about an 8-time All-Star. So, that's incredible. I mean, there aren't very many guys that jump into the league and in their first 10 years are in the All-Star game 8 times. I mean, you guys follow the division, especially. I mean, Jamal Murray's an unbelievable player for the Nuggets. He was an All-Star for the first time this year. So All-Star stuff is a serious ceiling, and if Self's right about that, it's going to be unbelievable. And I still think he should have gone number 1. There's no doubt in my mind that's who I would have taken, and that's not a knock on AJ. That's just I think Darryn is in a class of his own. I think that he you can put the ball in his hands and he can change the game and change a team immediately. And I think AJ is going to be phenomenal. He's going to have a great NBA career. I think he's an incredible player, but I think he needs help to get to that level. He's not the ball dominant playmaking kind of guy. I mean, he can make plays, but other people have to help him make plays way more than Darryn. So I can't wait. I'm going to watch a lot of Utah basketball. I'm excited to see what he looks like, and from everyone I've talked to and everything I've heard, and obviously including stuff from him last night, it seems like a great fit. And more importantly, my hat's off to him for showing genuine excitement. This isn't an act. This isn't a show. I don't think he's devastated that he didn't go 1. I think that was a goal. I think he would have loved to be the number 1 pick just for the, add it to the resume kind of thing. But I think he sees that this Utah opportunity is a really good thing for him. And I think every time you hear him say he can't wait to be there and he's happy to be there, I think you should take that at face value, because I think that's exactly right. This guy does not say things that he doesn't mean. In fact, one more quick story as I'm rambling here. After the loss to St. John's in the second round of the NCAA tournament, we were out in San Diego and, open locker room, and some of the TV cameras were asking Darryn, well, what are you going to remember about your only year at Kansas? And he said, I don't know if it's my only year. And, of course, everybody's like, what? Come on, man. And I think a lot of people in the room and crowded around him then kind of rolled their eyes like, here we go again. Another, ridiculous thing coming out of the Darryn Peterson story. And so everybody kind of moved on and went to shoot their shots or hit their deadlines or whatever. And I circled back when the locker room was almost empty and our clock was almost out. And I sat down with him and I said, hey, you know what saying that means. Like, why did you say that? That someone's going to tweet it out and it's going to take on a life of its own and it's going to be this whole thing. And I said, I know you're smart enough to know that saying that produces a result that's going to add more to the story. And I said, so I'm just curious why you said it. And he goes, because right now that's the truth. And I say the truth. He said, I'm going to sit down with my family and we're going to talk about what's next. And if what's next is if what's best for me is to come back to Kansas, then that's what I'll do. And if not, then I'll go pro. And I'm sure in that moment, even he knew, he had to know that the NBA was the next step. He had to know that. But I think I love that story because I think it shows that this is a guy who is, you always hear people talking about living where their feet are and being very present in the moment. And that instance and several others show that that's exactly who Darryn is. I mean, to almost to a fault. I mean, he genuinely meant in that moment, he didn't know if it was his last because they hadn't talked about it yet. So pretty cool story, pretty cool moment. And again, just a raw and real and honest dude. And I don't see him changing.
Matt, we appreciate the time and all the stories. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you again.
That sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Matt Tait covering the Kansas Jayhawks for R1S1 Sports and Wave the Wheat. We got to take a break. When we come back, hopefully we'll be here. Yak, do we have to evacuate? There's something going on in the building.
Not quite yet.
Oh, good. All right, so we'll be here when we come back. That's good news.
I ain't going nowhere.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome to This is Chase Scott and Ben Anderson.
Everything I have heard, Walker loves Utah. Walker wants to be in Utah. Walker's happy in Utah. Walker would prefer to end up in Utah, but he just wants as much money as possible.
He was around the team an incredible amount last year.
Yep, he was.
He was with them on the road on trips that he absolutely did not need to go to for a player that shut it down for the entire year. And he was with them at the end of the year, again, where he had even less incentive to be with the team, around the players, around the new players in Jaren Jackson Jr.
The Jazz love Walker the person. They really like Walker the player. They want him to be a part of their team. But you can't pay the wrong person too much money because then you're not building a championship team anymore. You know, you're not building a contending team. You're just paying your dudes because you like your dudes, and that's not the job. You've got to get everybody in the right place at the right price.
Catch Jake and Ben afternoons from 2 to 6 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
We all have routines. I'm Jabron, and with diabetes, mine was finger sticks. Sometimes I skip them because it hurt. The Freestyle Libre 3CGM changed that. It gives me glucose insights without finger sticks. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
Finger sticks are required if your glucose alarms and readings do not match symptoms, or when you see check blood glucose symbol for the first 12 hours. The views expressed should not be used for medical diagnosis or treatment as a substitute for professional medical advice. Individual circumstances may vary. For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
To win tickets Wednesday, caller 12 right now wins a pair of tickets to watch Leonard Skinner at the Utah State Fair September 16th. Call 801-575-ZONE, 801-575-ZONE. Caller 12 right now to see Leonard Skinner at the Utah State Fair on September 16th. You hear all those stories about the Kansas days from someone who clearly has, as he said, has an affinity, an affection for Darryn Peterson. Make you even more excited, or is that just not possible at this point after he told you he had a chip on his shoulder and wants to play all 82 games? Literally the two things you wanted to hear out of him.
Yeah, I heard, I don't know if it's true, but that he was going or got a Kobe tat. That's a player.
He said he got it on his shoulder.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I hold Kobe in high esteem as a player.
I found it a little surprising just because Peterson would have been like
Doesn't matter.
5 or 6 years old when Kobe was
but
in
it's the same thing with me with Willie Mays. I never saw Willie Mays play.
I get it, but it's still unusual. That makes you unusual, makes him unusual. I think people mostly admire the people they watch, and I just wouldn't think a 5 or 6 year old could get that attached. I know stuff's out there on YouTube and all that, but
I think
still
it's
people
easier
live in
than
the
ever.
moment. It is easier than ever, for sure.
You can watch it in HD.
Right.
I never watched Willie in HD. But I think it's awesome that that's a role model to aspire to. And if you can get anywhere near it, then wow, and that's the greatest pick in Jazz history. We'll see how it develops here. But yeah, I think that he answered questions. The idea of him sitting out obviously was prevalent. And it's probably, I think, the only way he didn't go number one. Because he was targeted for number one for 3 years prior. And then it had this season, and he goes number two. And as Bill Self said, going number two is not exactly a shocking disgrace. I think if you're 10 years old, hey, in 7 or 8 years, you can be the number two pick in the draft. I mean, we'd all go crazy over that. That would be unbelievable, right?
But you want a hyper-competitive person who's driven to win championships, and so you don't accept two when one is in reach.
All that stuff doesn't matter anymore. Now it's how you produce. And he said that I'm now an NBA player. Yep. So everything before is irrelevant. It's what you do from this moment on that will define your career. And if you go on and have a legendary NBA career, nobody gives a crap what happened in Kansas. And the Jazz were shrewd enough to do all these things to get themselves in this position, and they took advantage of it. If it comes to pass in 2045, that when he's being enshrined, that he had this phenomenal career, and that's the intent, and that's the goal. And along the way, in order to get there, you're going to have team success, presumably, and that's what it matters. And then you'll have all the money and all the accolades and everything you could possibly want.
It did cost him about $8 million dropping from 1 to 2. That is a drop in the bucket versus what he's going to earn later in his career.
Well, what he's already earning now,
yeah,
with the
the Adidas deal and the NIL money he got at Kansas, yeah. All right, DJ and PK, when we come back, Brian Geltzeiler, SiriusXM NBA radio and NBA TV contributor, joins us next to talk draft, and Darryn Peterson. Stay with us.
Ice Cube's Big 3 is back. The most competitive basketball league on earth is on CBS this Saturday. Big 3 All-Star Dwight Howard and the LA Riot take on Greg Monroe and the Dallas Power. Then Coach Rick Mahorn, Sensation Nazir Kaur, and the Detroit Amps look to protect home court against back-to-back MVP Michael Beasley and the defending champs Miami 305. The game played the way you love. Watch live Saturday on CBS at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, and catch replays on BET.
Oh, yay, yay!